"Have a good night, ma'am," the waitress signed in silence. And the most powerful woman in Chicago's underworld decided this exhausted girl would be the perfect wife for her Mafia boss son. It all started at 11 p.m. on Christmas Eve when Olivia Carter took a last-minute job as a temp waitress at the Obsidian, the most exclusive nightclub in Chicago and the hidden heart of the Valentino Empire. The pay was triple the usual rate, the venue was dripping with wealth, and she desperately needed money for her 8-year-old brother Noah's emergency cochlear implant surgery. What no one mentioned was that the uniform included 6-inch heels, borrowed shoes from a coworker, shoes clearly designed by someone who wanted to watch the world burn one blister at a time. "Size 7, the floor manager said, shoving the torture devices into her hands. "That's all we got." Olivia wore a size 8. "They'll stretch," she lied. They did not. This was her third shift of the day. She had started at 4 a.m., at a coffee shop across town, brewing lattes for people who had never known hunger. By noon, she was scrubbing toilets in a downtown office building, her knees raw against cold tiles. And now, at 11 p.m., she was here, in a club where a single bottle of champagne cost more than her monthly rent, serving people who looked right through her as if she were made of glass. By midnight, when the club filled with guests in designer suits and diamonds that could feed Noah for a decade, Olivia could no longer feel her feet. By 1 a.m., she had developed a walk that could only be described as a wounded penguin trying to maintain dignity. By 2 a.m., she was seriously considering ripping the shoes off and pretending that barefoot service was some kind of avant-garde aesthetic choice. Her stomach had been empty for 36 hours because she had given her last granola bar, expired by 2 weeks, to Noah before leaving. Her electricity was 3 days from being cut off. Her landlord had slipped an eviction notice under her door that morning, the red letters screaming final warning like a death sentence. In her pocket, she had exactly $17.83, enough for milk and bread if she skipped meals for another week. But she held on. Because no one needed that surgery. Because rent doesn't pay itself. Because their parents died 2 years ago in a car crash that still haunted her nightmares. And because Olivia Carter was not the kind of woman who quit, even when the universe was clearly conspiring against her, even when her feet were bleeding inside borrowed shoes, even when she was one stumble away from collapse. She had no idea that in 3 hours, she would sign 6 simple words to a stranger, and the most dangerous man in America would decide she belonged to him. If you love stories full of drama, emotion, and unexpected twists, hit that like button and share this with someone who needs a good story tonight. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. The Obsidian was unlike anywhere Olivia had ever set foot in during her 27 years of life. If someone had told her that heaven and hell could exist in the same space, this would have been it. The ceiling soared at least 15 meters high, completely covered in black mirrors that reflected the light of crystal chandeliers, creating the illusion that the entire room was floating inside a universe made of crushed diamonds. The black marble floor was polished to such a flawless sheen that Olivia could see her own reflection in it, a small, faint silhouette, as if even the ground itself was reminding her that she did not belong here. The walls were draped in deep red velvet, the color of aged wine, and scattered throughout were abstract paintings that Olivia was certain each cost as much as the entire apartment she was renting. No, the apartment she was about to be evicted from. The bar stretched endlessly, lined with hundreds of liquor bottles standing like soldiers in glass armor, each bearing a name Olivia could not pronounce and a price she dared not imagine. She had glanced at the drink menu at the start of her shift, and her eyes had nearly fallen out of their sockets when she read that a single bottle of Dom Perignon cost $2,800. That was 2 months of her rent. That was 60 hours of scrubbing toilets. That was 700 lattes she would have to make at the coffee shop, and the people here drank it as if it were tap water. Olivia carried her champagne tray through the crowd, struggling to keep her balance in shoes that tortured her with every passing second. She passed a group of women in dresses she guessed each cost more than her entire yearly income combined, giggling about a trip to the Maldives the week before as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. A man in a navy blue suit with a gold watch as large as a fist raised his glass without even looking at her, as if the champagne had simply materialized out of thin air. Olivia poured, smiled, and moved on, invisible. She felt completely invisible. Not the romantic kind of invisible you see in movies, but the kind that made her wonder whether she truly existed at all, or whether she was merely a shadow programmed to carry trays and pour drinks. A shrill female voice cut through her thoughts. "You there, come here." Olivia turned around. A woman around 40 years old, her face stretched tight with Botox, lips pumped so full they looked like two slugs clinging to each other, was snapping her fingers at Olivia as one would summon a dog. "There is lipstick on my glass." The woman held it out with a look of disgust, as if Olivia had just handed her a dead cockroach. "Clean it and pour me a new one." Olivia looked at the glass. The lipstick mark was clearly the woman's own, matching perfectly the color on her mouth. But Olivia had learned long ago that logic had no place in moments like this. "Yes, ma'am," Olivia said with a professional smile, even though at least 30 other responses were screaming through her mind, each one capable of getting her fired on the spot. She wiped the glass, poured fresh champagne, and handed it back. The woman did not say thank you. Of course she did not. Olivia moved on, and before she had taken 5 steps, a hand landed on her hip from behind. She turned to see a middle-aged man, his face flushed red from alcohol, grinning with teeth so white they looked freshly bleached. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, his breath thick with whiskey. "What time do you get off tonight?" Olivia stepped back, out of his reach. "I work until the event ends, sir." He laughed as if she had just told a great joke. "No, I mean after that. You want to make some extra money. I will pay double." Inside Olivia, something ignited. She wanted to fling the champagne tray into his face. She wanted to scream that she had an unfinished college degree, that she had a younger brother to take care of, that she was a human being and not something to be bought and sold. But she did not, because no one needed that surgery, because the $17.83 in her pocket did not give her the right to be angry. "Thank you, but I am not interested," Olivia said coldly, then turned and walked away as fast as she could on shoes that were killing her one step at a time. She heard the man scoff behind her, saying something to his friends about the stuck-up little waitress, but she did not turn around. She went straight to the bar, set the tray down, and took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, but from rage, from humiliation, from the fact that she was 27 years old, had been working 14 hours a day for 2 years straight, and was still standing here being treated like trash by people who had never had to worry about anything in their lives. She looked down at her shoes. Blood had soaked through her socks, and she could feel the warm, sticky liquid between her toes. 3 more hours. She only had to endure 3 more hours. She would have enough money for Noah's surgery deposit. She would go home, hold her brother, and everything would be okay. Everything had to be okay. Olivia drew in a deep breath, picked up her tray again, and stepped back into the crowd. The professional smile returned to her lips, flawless and fake, just like the diamonds glittering on the necks of the women around her. She did not know that a pair of eyes was watching her from the darkest corner of the room. Eyes the color of a snowstorm, cold and calculating, belonging to the man all of Chicago feared. And she did not know that in less than 1 hour, she would collapse right in front of him. The clock on the wall read 2:43 in the morning when Olivia received the order from the floor manager to bring champagne into the VIP area. She had spent the entire night trying to avoid that section after hearing her coworkers whisper that it was where the truly dangerous people sat. Not dangerous in the way the drunk man who had groped her earlier was dangerous, but dangerous in the way that made people disappear without a trace. But an order was an order, and Olivia did not have the right to refuse, not when she needed every single tip dollar so she could go home to Noah. She stepped through the black velvet curtain that separated the VIP area from the rest of the club and immediately felt the shift in the air. Outside it was loud and electric. In here it was unnervingly quiet. The lighting was dimmer. Massive black leather sofas were arranged into private sections, and the men seated here were not laughing or showing off like the crowd outside. They spoke in low voices, their gazes sharp, and each of them radiated a kind of power Olivia could feel even without looking directly at them. She tightened her grip on the champagne tray and began moving between the tables, trying to make herself as small as possible, as invisible as possible. Do not draw attention. Do not spill anything. Do not look anyone in the eyes. She repeated the words in her head like a prayer. But the universe seemed to have other plans for Olivia Carter that night. It happened so fast, she had no time to react. The oversized toe of her shoe caught on the edge of a rug, a thick Persian carpet she was certain cost as much as her entire apartment. Her ankle twisted at an angle no human body was meant to endure, and time slowed. She saw the 12 champagne glasses on the tray begin to tilt, golden liquid shimmering as if dancing in midair. All of it headed straight toward a man seated in the darkest corner of the room. She could not see his face clearly, only a broad, powerful silhouette, a flawless black suit tailored perfectly to every line of his body. and his eyes, gray eyes, locked onto her with an unreadable coldness. Driven by a reflex she did not know she possessed, Olivia lunged forward. Her left hand clamped onto the tray, while her right hand slammed against the floor to bear the full weight of her body. Her knee struck the marble with a sharp, painful sound, but the champagne tray remained steady in her grasp, not a single drop spilling. She had saved the tray. She herself lay sprawled on the floor like a stranded fish, uniform dress twisted, hair falling loose, and her knee already screaming with pain. 1 second of silence, then 2, then 3. Olivia could hear her heart pounding like a war drum. Slowly, she lifted her head, still holding the champagne tray aloft, and came face to face with the man she had nearly soaked. He had stood up, and now she could see every detail. He was at least 1.85 meters tall, broad-shouldered, his body carved like polished stone. His face was sharply defined, cheekbones honed like blades, a hard, square jaw, thin lips pressed into a flat line. His hair was ink black, slicked back perfectly, not a strand out of place. But it was his eyes that were most frightening. Gray like a sky before a storm, cold as winter ice, completely devoid of emotion as they looked down at her. He was not angry, not amused, not contemptuous. He was simply observing her, like a scientist studying a strange insect beneath glass. And somehow that indifference was more terrifying than rage. Olivia scrambled to her feet, gathering what little dignity she had left while still holding the tray like a shield. She knew she should apologize. She knew she should bow her head and leave immediately. But perhaps because she was too exhausted, too hurt, and too humiliated, her mouth betrayed her. "I apologize, sir," she said, her voice so calm it surprised even her. "I was testing the quality of your marble floor. Carrara marble imported from Italy, if I am not mistaken. Excellent quality. Very cold and very hard. 10 points for durability, 0 for comfort." She did not know what she was thinking. She did not know why she was joking with a man who looked like he could end her life with a single frown. But she was too worn down to be afraid. And perhaps recklessness was all that remained when someone had nothing left to lose. Something flickered through those icy gray eyes, too fast for Olivia to grasp. Surprise, amusement, or maybe just the reflection of light. She could not tell. He did not say a word. He studied her for 1 long second, as if committing every line of her face to memory, then turned and walked back into the shadows behind him, disappearing as though he had never been there at all. Olivia stood frozen, her heart still racing, her knee throbbing, the champagne tray still in her hands. She did not know who that man was. She did not know that he was Dominic Valentino, the most powerful Mafia boss in Chicago, the man the entire city feared. And she did not know that this was the first time in 5 years that Dominic Valentino had looked at a woman for longer than 3 seconds. Olivia left the VIP area with trembling legs and a heart still pounding, as if it might leap out of her chest. She did not know what had just happened, did not know why she had said something so foolish to a man who clearly looked capable of crushing her as easily as an ant, but she did not have the luxury of thinking about it now. There was still more than 1 hour left in her shift, and she needed to stay focused if she did not want to invite more trouble. She headed toward the bar to exchange her tray, trying to ignore the dull, throbbing pain in the knee she had slammed against the marble floor. By morning there would certainly be a bruise the size of an egg, but that was a problem for a future Olivia, and present Olivia already had more than enough to carry. As she passed near the entrance, her gaze caught on an elderly woman standing alone before an abstract painting on the wall. The woman's silver hair was swept into an elegant bun, her back perfectly straight with the posture of someone long accustomed to the world's respect. A strand of black pearls shimmered softly at her neck under the lights, and the fur coat draped over her shoulders looked as if it cost more than an entire year of Olivia's wages. But it was not the woman's wealth that made Olivia stop. It was the white envelope that had slipped from the pocket of her coat and now lay unnoticed on the floor, stark against the black marble like a silent plea for help. Olivia picked it up. The envelope was heavy, made of thick, expensive paper, sealed on the back with red wax embossed with a finely carved letter V, clearly something important. "Ma'am," Olivia called politely. There was no response. The woman remained motionless, her attention fixed on the painting. "Ma'am, you dropped this," Olivia said a little louder. Still no response. A few nearby guests turned toward Olivia with irritation, as if she were making noise in a library. But the older woman did not turn, did not react, stood there like a refined statue. And then Olivia understood. It was the moment when everything in her mind slid into place like pieces of a puzzle. The way the woman tilted her head slightly to one side, as if trying to catch sound from a particular direction. The tiny hearing aid, almost invisible, tucked into her right ear, something Olivia had seen thousands of times, every day, for 8 years. The woman's eyes searched for lips rather than sound, the habit of those who had learned to read the world with their eyes instead of their ears. Olivia's heart tightened. She knew that feeling. She had lived with it since Noah had entered the world in silence 8 years earlier, when doctors had told her parents that her little brother would never hear them say his name. She had learned sign language before Noah learned how to walk. She had spent thousands of hours becoming a bridge between her brother and the world of sound. Without hesitation, Olivia stepped around to stand directly in front of the woman, making sure she was within her line of sight. The woman looked up, her eyes sharp yet carrying something Olivia recognized instantly, the loneliness of someone who is not heard. Olivia raised her hands and began to sign, the movements fluid and precise, shaped by 8 years of daily practice. "You dropped this," she signed gently, offering the envelope with her other hand, then continued with the most sincere smile she could summon through her exhaustion. "Have a good evening." 6 words, just 6 simple words in sign language. But the woman's reaction stopped Olivia cold. Her eyes widened, then filled with tears that shimmered in the dim light. Her hands trembled as she took the envelope, her lips moving as if trying to form words that would not come. Helena Valentino had lived 68 years. She had ruled the Shadow Empire beside her husband before his death. She had raised her son alone into the most powerful man in Chicago. She had seen every kind of person, from cold-blooded killers to hypocritical politicians, from flatterers to traitors. She believed herself immune to emotion, but in the 8 months since her hearing had begun to fade, the world had treated her like a pitiful invalid. Her son hired dozens of specialists, yet none of them looked at her as a human being. Business partners shouted in her face as if she were stupid. Old friends drifted away because communication had become too difficult. Servants spoke about her as though she were not even present. She had become invisible inside her own life. And yet this girl, this waitress with a bruised knee and exhausted eyes that still held warmth, had seen her. Not her wealth, not her power, but a hearing-impaired woman who needed to be spoken to properly, and had done so as naturally as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. "Thank you," Helena whispered, her voice trembling in a way she had not allowed for 50 years. "Thank you so very much." Olivia simply smiled softly, dipped her head in a small bow, and walked away. She did not ask for a tip. She did not linger for a reward. She did not act as if she had done anything extraordinary. She simply returned to her work, disappearing into the crowd as though she had never changed anyone's life at all. Helena stood there, the envelope in her hand, and for the first time in many years, she felt tears slide down her cheeks. Not tears of sorrow, but the tears of someone who had just found something they did not even know they had been searching for. Helena stood motionless, watching the young woman's figure fade into the crowd, the envelope still resting in her hand, while her mind drifted far away. She had lived 68 years in this world, seen thousands of faces pass through her life, learned to read people the way others read open books. She knew when someone was lying, when a smile was merely a mask, when kindness was nothing more than a cover for hidden intentions. But that girl, that waitress whose shoes were clearly torturing her feet, and whose knee was already bruised from the fall Helena had witnessed from afar, had worn no mask at all. The kindness was real, the smile was real, and in Helena's world, that was rarer than diamonds. She quickly wiped the tear from her cheek, something she had not allowed anyone to see in the 15 years since her husband died. Mercers did not cry. Valentinos did not show weakness. That was the rule she had lived by her entire life. And yet tonight, a nameless waitress had broken that rule with just 6 simple words in sign language. Helena turned her gaze toward the VIP area where her son was seated. Dominic had returned to his place after his encounter with the girl, but Helena knew her son well. She knew the way he pretended to focus on a meeting while his eyes kept drifting elsewhere, and that direction was precisely where the waitress had disappeared. Helena smiled, the smile of an old fox who had just caught the scent of the perfect prey. She had been searching for 5 years, ever since Victoria's betrayal, for a woman worthy of her son. She had introduced countless well-bred daughters of business partners, beauty queens, models, lawyers, doctors, all of whom Dominic rejected outright before even finishing a single dinner. Her son said he needed no one, that he had sworn never to trust a woman again, that his heart had turned to stone on the night he discovered Victoria, the woman he loved, had sold family information to their enemies and nearly gotten them all killed. But tonight, Helena had seen something that perhaps even Dominic himself had not realized. Her son had looked at that girl, not with the cold indifference he reserved for all other women, but with curiosity, real curiosity, something Helena had not seen in his eyes for 5 years. And for a mother desperate to see her son truly live instead of merely exist in shadows and power, that was enough. She lifted her hand in a subtle gesture, and as if appearing from nowhere, Marco stood beside her, Dominic's loyal right hand, a tall man with an ice-cold face and eyes that missed nothing. "Yes, ma'am," Marco said with a respectful bow. "The girl who just spoke to me," Helena said, her voice low and firm, the voice she used in business meetings, the waitress with brown hair and shoes that do not fit. "I want to know everything about her, her name, address, family, work, debts, medical history, even whether she drinks her coffee black or with milk. I want to know what she dreams of when she sleeps, and what she thinks about when she wakes." Marco did not frown or ask why. In their world, questions were a luxury not meant to be wasted. He only nodded once. "Yes, ma'am. I will have a full report within 24 hours. And Marco," Helena added as he turned to leave, her voice softer now but carrying an authority that could not be resisted, "do not tell Dominic. Not yet." This time a flicker of surprise crossed Marco's eyes, but it vanished just as quickly. "As you wish." Then he disappeared into the shadows, swift and silent, the same way he had appeared. Helena turned back toward the VIP area. Dominic now seemed fully focused on the meeting, or at least trying to appear so. Her son did not know that his mother had seen everything, did not know that at this very moment the gears of fate had begun to turn, did not know that the waitress with the warm smile and hands fluent in sign language would change his life forever. "When I decide something," Helena whispered to herself like a vow, "the universe had better be ready." And Helena Valentino had decided. That girl would become her daughter-in-law, one way or another. It was 4:17 in the morning when Olivia pushed open the door to the apartment, trying not to make a sound even though the rusted hinges squealed like a cat with its tail stepped on, and she had walked 40 minutes home from the bus stop because there were no more routes running at 3 in the morning, leaving her legs no longer feeling like legs at all, but like 2 aching slabs of flesh reluctantly attached to her body. She kicked off the torturous shoes the moment she crossed the threshold, and for the first time all night she allowed herself to wince in pain. The blood between her toes had dried into crusted lines, and her socks were now a deep red, instead of the black they had once been. She would have to soak her feet in salt water, bandage them carefully, and find another pair of shoes for her shift at the coffee shop in just a few hours, because she started at 4 in the afternoon. No, wait, today was Thursday, so the shift began at 6 in the morning, which meant she had less than 2 hours to sleep. This 5th-floor apartment without an elevator had been home to her and Noah for 2 years now, ever since she sold her parents' house to pay medical debt. One tiny bedroom, a kitchenette with a rusted sink whose tap ran brown for the first 30 seconds, a bathroom with only cold water because the heater had broken in October, and the repair cost $150 she did not have. Cracks ran along the walls like the map of a starving country, and the smell of dampness had soaked so deeply into the bricks that she no longer noticed it. But this was home, the only place she could call home. Olivia slipped quietly into the small bedroom where Noah was sleeping, having given him the only room while she slept on the old sofa in the living room, the one with springs that had punched through the upholstery in 3 places so she had to layer blankets to keep them from stabbing her back each night. Noah was curled up like a kitten beneath 3 blankets because the heater had stopped working the week before, his face peaceful in sleep, brown curls like their mother's, lips slightly parted, breathing steady, his cochlear implant resting on the nightstand beside the worn stuffed bear he had slept with since infancy. Olivia stood there for a long time, watching her brother sleep, and in the weak glow of streetlight filtering through the curtains she could see every line of his face, his eyes like their father's, his smile like their mother's. And sometimes when Noah smiled, Olivia felt as if their parents had never left. She missed her father, his booming laugh during football games, the way he taught her to ride a bike and wrapped her scraped knees, the way he told her his girl could do anything with such certainty she almost believed it was true. She missed her mother, the scent of lavender perfume, Sunday mornings with smiley face pancakes, the way she learned sign language overnight when the doctor said Noah was deaf, the way she said they would love their boy in the way he needed. They were gone too fast. One ordinary evening 2 years ago, a truck ran a red light, and in an instant Olivia lost everything. She had been in her final year studying business administration when the phone rang. She remembered sitting in the library, laughing with friends seconds earlier, and then the world she knew collapsing in a single call. She dropped out, sold the house, took custody of Noah, worked 3 jobs at once, and tried not to die in the process. Olivia tucked the blanket more securely around Noah, pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead the way their mother once had, then slipped back out and closed the door carefully, leaning against the wall as she looked toward the dining table where unpaid bills were stacked like a monument to despair. She sat down and began turning them over one by one. The electricity bill overdue by 2 weeks for $480 with a red warning of shutoff in 7 days. The hospital bill from Noah's most recent visit for $2,300 just for the consultation, not including the upcoming surgery. The rent for this month $1,200, 10 days overdue. The eviction notice stamped final warning in blood-red letters on top with a deadline of December 31st, only 6 days away, and in the corner the letter from the Children's Hospital about Noah's implant adjustment surgery, estimated cost $30,000, with a $10,000 deposit due by January 15th. Olivia added it all in her head. 480 plus 2,300 plus 1,200 plus 10,000, $13,980. She needed $13,980 within 3 weeks. How much did she have right now? She counted her tips from tonight, $63, added to the $17.83 she already had, $80.83. She needed $13,980, and she had $80.83. That was the distance between her and the abyss. Olivia wanted to laugh, because if she did not laugh, she would scream, and if she screamed, Noah would wake, and she did not want her brother to see her like this. She did not cry. She had sworn never to cry in front of Noah. But Noah was asleep, and the wall between the living room and the bedroom was thick enough for a few minutes of surrender. Olivia sank onto the cold floor, her back against the wall, knees pulled to her chest, and she cried, silently, as she had on hundreds of nights before, tears sliding down her cheeks onto hands cracked from dish soap, toilet cleaner, and endless scrubbing. She cried from exhaustion, from hunger, from loneliness, from being only 27 years old and feeling as though she had lived 100. She did not know that somewhere else in the city, inside a mansion 1,000 times grander than this crumbling apartment, a woman was reading a report about her life and smiling at the plan that would change everything. 3 days after Christmas night, Olivia was standing behind the counter at the Bean and Brew Cafe at 2 p.m, her eyes swollen from lack of sleep and her hands trembling after 4 shots of espresso just to stay upright, having slept a total of 9 hours over the past 3 days, divided evenly into 3 nights of 3 hours each if she was lucky. The morning shift at the cafe ran from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, the afternoon office cleaning shift from 3 until 7 in the evening, and the night waitressing job at an Italian restaurant from 8 until midnight. Then home, sleep, wake up, repeat, until she had become a machine programmed only to work and work until it broke, except she had no right to break because Noah needed her. Bean and Brew sat on a corner in a working-class neighborhood, the kind of place where construction workers stopped in for cheap coffee to stay awake, and single mothers grabbed lattes before dropping their kids at school, not the kind of cafe where gleaming black Mercedes parked out front. So when the door opened and a man stepped inside, Olivia knew immediately that something was wrong. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit made from fabric Olivia was certain cost as much as her monthly rent, his face cold as carved stone, his eyes sweeping the room with the alertness of someone accustomed to assessing threats in seconds. And most importantly, she recognized him, not from anywhere distant but from Christmas night, from the VIP section of the Obsidian, from the shadows behind the gray-eyed man she had nearly spilled champagne on. He had stood there silently observing, and now he was here in her shabby cafe, looking straight at her, as if he had known she would be here all along. A chill ran down Olivia's spine as she tightened her grip on the edge of the counter. Survival instincts honed from years in unsafe neighborhoods, screaming warnings in her head. "Olivia Carter," the man said in a low, emotionless voice, as if reading her name from a list. "Who is asking?" she replied cautiously. "My name is Marco. I represent the Valentino family." Valentino. The name rang like an alarm bell. Anyone who lived in Chicago knew the Valentinos. On the surface, they were one of the wealthiest families in the city, owners of a vast real estate and casino empire, featured on the covers of Forbes and business magazines, but anyone who had lived in Chicago long enough knew what lay beneath that surface. Rumors of ties to the underworld, of enemies who vanished without a trace, of real power behind visible power. Olivia swallowed hard but did not let fear show on her face. She had learned long ago how to hide it. "I do not know any Valentino family," she said coolly, "and I am working. How can I help you, sir? What would you like to order?" Marco did not flinch at her tone, did not even frown. He simply placed a white envelope on the counter with the calm of a man unaccustomed to refusal. "Mrs. Helena Valentino, the woman you helped on Christmas night at the Obsidian, wishes to send her thanks and an offer." Olivia stared at the envelope. The same thick paper, the same red wax seal stamped with the letter V, identical to the one the old woman had dropped that night. "I do not need thanks," Olivia said, pushing the envelope away as if it were a venomous snake. "I only did what anyone with a shred of decency would do." Mrs. Helena disagrees. Marco slid the envelope back toward her. "She believes true kindness is rare and worthy of appreciation. She requires a personal sign language interpreter, salary $15,000 per month. Comprehensive medical insurance for you and any family member you wish to register. Immediate start, $15,000 a month." The number exploded in Olivia's mind like a bomb. It was 5 times her current combined income from 3 jobs. It was enough to erase every bill crushing her chest, enough to care for Noah, to get him his surgery, to buy him new books instead of second-hand ones, enough to sleep more than 3 hours a night. But Olivia had lived long enough to know there was no such thing as a free lunch, especially not one priced at $15,000 a month from a family the entire city feared. "Why?" she asked bluntly, meeting Marco's eyes as if daring him to lie. "There are thousands of professional interpreters out there, certified, licensed, experienced with high society. Why me, a nameless waitress with shoes that do not fit?" Marco studied her for a long moment, and in that instant Olivia saw something flicker behind his cold gaze, not contempt, but almost respect. "Because Mrs. Helena wants you," he said simply. "And the Valentino family always gets what they want." It did not sound like an invitation. It sounded like a warning, and that was precisely why Olivia made her decision. She pushed the envelope back one final time, harder, firmer. "Thank you for Mrs. Valentino's interest," Olivia said, her voice calm but hard as steel. "But I do not believe in offers that are too good to be true. I learned that lesson already. That lesson had cost her parents their lives, born on the night she sat in the living room listening to her father talk about an incredible investment opportunity, about putting all their savings into it, about the bright future waiting for their family. 2 months later, everything was gone. The money vanished, the house mortgaged, and her parents dead on the road after a meeting with people they trusted. She had no proof the two were connected. The police called it an accident. But deep down, Olivia had always known. Marco showed no surprise at her refusal. He merely nodded in an odd way, as if he had expected this response all along. He picked up the envelope, but instead of pocketing it, placed a small business card on the counter. "When you change your mind," he said, "call this number, anytime, day or night. The offer does not expire." Then he turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving Olivia standing there with her heart racing and the card on the counter. She looked at it, just a string of numbers, no name, no address, no logo, like an invitation from the dark. She should throw it away. She knew she should. That was the sensible thing to do. But her hand lifted it and slipped it into her apron pocket anyway. She did not know why. Perhaps because a part of her, the part slowly dying from exhaustion and despair, wanted to keep hold of a single thread of hope, even if that hope came from the shadows. That night, Olivia got home at 11:45 after her shift at the Italian restaurant, and knew immediately that something was wrong. The apartment door stood slightly open, hallway light spilling in a thin, pale line across the floor, and Mrs. Wilson, the 63-year-old neighbor who often watched Noah for her, was standing right at the threshold with a face drained of color from worry. "Olivia," Mrs. Wilson said the moment she saw her, her voice trembling, "Noah has had a fever since the afternoon. I gave him Tylenol, but it would not come down, and he keeps saying his ear hurts. I tried to call you, but your phone would not go through." Olivia's heart clenched as if crushed in a fist. Her phone service had been cut off 2 days earlier because she could not afford the $70 bill. She ran into the bedroom, dropping her bag and coat in the middle of the floor, not stopping to thank Mrs. Wilson or apologize for making her wait. Noah lay on the bed, his face flushed red like an overripe tomato, sweat soaking the pillow and his shirt, his eyes dull and unfocused, the playful spark gone, and he was crying silently, tears sliding down his cheeks without a sound because he could not hear his own sobs. Olivia placed her hand on Noah's forehead and nearly jerked it back in shock. It was hot. Hot like fire burning beneath his skin. She had seen Noah with fevers before, but never like this. "Sister," Noah signed weakly, his small hands trembling so badly she had to lean closer to understand. "It hurts. My ear hurts so much. It feels like needles stabbing inside my head." Olivia did not need to hear another word. She scooped Noah up, wrapped him in the thickest blanket she could find, and rushed out of the apartment. There was no car, no money for a taxi, so she ran 7 blocks to the nearest community hospital, St. Mary, Noah in her arms, her legs still not fully healed from Christmas night, screaming with pain at every step. But she did not care. She could not care. Not now. The emergency room was packed, as it always was at the end of the year, when people drank too much, drove too fast, and made stupid decisions they paid for in blood. Olivia waited 2 hours and 13 minutes, holding Noah as he trembled and cried in her arms, sitting on a hard, cold plastic chair, amid the smell of disinfectant and the groans of other patients, before they were finally called in to see a doctor. Dr. Thompson was a man in his early 50s with graying hair and the weary eyes of someone who had witnessed too much tragedy. He examined Noah carefully, shone a light into his ear, took his temperature, drew blood, ordered a CT scan, and with every passing minute, Olivia felt her heart tighten further. Then Dr. Thompson turned to her with a look she had seen too many times on doctors' faces over the past 2 years. The look of someone about to deliver bad news and knowing it would shatter the person listening. "Ms. Carter," he said gently but gravely, "Noah's cochlear implant is infected. It appears to have shifted from its original position and caused a severe inflammatory reaction. We need emergency surgery to reposition the device and clear the infection." Olivia felt the blood drain from her face, felt the room spin as if the ground beneath her were collapsing. "How urgent?" she asked, her voice strangled. "Within 1 week," Dr. Thompson replied, "ideally within the next 5 days. If we wait longer, the infection could spread to surrounding tissue. He risks permanent hearing loss in the remaining ear, and in the worst case, the infection could enter the bloodstream and cause sepsis, which is life-threatening. Permanent hearing loss, life-threatening." The words echoed in Olivia's mind like funeral bells. "The cost?" she asked, already knowing the answer would be unbearable. Dr. Thompson looked at her with the familiar pity of someone who knew he was about to break her and had no choice but to speak. "About $30,000, he said softly, "including surgery, replacement hardware, and post-operative care. And I should be honest. Noah's Medicaid does not cover this procedure because it is classified as an elective implant-related surgery rather than a medical emergency under their administrative definition." $30,000. Olivia looked down at Noah, lying on the hospital bed, his wide eyes fixed on her with complete trust. He could not hear what the doctor had said, but he could see her face, and he was trying to smile to reassure her. "Sister," Noah signed weakly, still forcing that smile. "I will be okay. Do not worry. You always figure everything out." And in that moment, Olivia's heart shattered into a million pieces, because Noah believed her. He believed his sister would fix everything like she always had, but this time Olivia did not know how. She did not have $30,000. She did not even have $300. She had $80.83, a stack of overdue bills, and a business card in her pocket from a family she had sworn she would never contact. "Is there any way?" Olivia asked, forcing her voice to stay steady. "Any assistance programs? Any charities?" Dr. Thompson handed her a sheet of paper filled with names and numbers. "I will give you this list, but I have to be honest. Within a week it will be very difficult to get approval. These organizations usually take 2 to 3 months to process applications." Olivia took the paper, stared at the long list of names and phone numbers, and felt the last of her hope slipping through her fingers like sand. 1 week. She had 1 week to find $30,000, or her brother would die. The next 4 days were 4 days of hell that Olivia never wanted to remember. Days spent calling every organization on the list Dr. Thompson had given her. 14 calls on the first day, 12 on the second, 10 on the third, when she began calling back the ones that had already refused her, begging them to reconsider. 14 rejections delivered with reasons she learned by heart like a sorrowful poem. "The fund is exhausted for this year. Please reapply in January. Standard review time is 8 to 12 weeks. Your brother's case does not qualify because implant-related procedures are classified as elective surgery. We regret to inform you that applications are now closed." Each refusal slicing another piece off her hope, until by the 4th day there was nothing left to cut. She sold her mother's engagement ring, the last tangible memory of her parents, the one thing she had sworn she would keep until death, and the pawn shop gave her $320 with the air of granting charity, even though she knew the ring had been worth at least $2,000 when her father bought it 20 years earlier. She sold her blood at a donation center for $50 and spent the rest of the day dizzy because she had not eaten since the day before. She started a GoFundMe campaign with a picture of Noah smiling brightly and a story about a deaf child needing life-saving surgery, shared it across social media with the few contacts she still had, and after 3 days, she received $147 from 11 kind strangers, along with 3 messages from scammers pretending to help so they could steal her banking information. She stood outside a pawn shop staring at a sign that read, "We buy hair," and wondered what her waist-length hair might be worth. $150, the shop owner said after handling it like merchandise. "Maybe $200 if you let us cut it close to the scalp." And Olivia walked away, not because she loved her hair, but because $200 was not worth losing something when it could not save Noah. On the 5th day, she sat on the cold bathroom floor of the hospital at 3 a.m. and cried until there were no tears left. Noah slept in his hospital room with an IV line taped to his arm, his fever still high despite antibiotics, and Dr. Thompson had said that if surgery did not happen within 48 hours, they would have to move Noah to intensive care. She had tried everything, done everything possible, and it still was not enough. $320 from the ring, $50 from selling blood, $147 from GoFundMe, $80.83 she already had, a total of $597.83 when she needed $30,000, leaving her short $29,402.17 with 48 hours left. Olivia stared at her hands, cracked and rough from endless work, and for the first time in her life, she thought about giving up. Not giving up on Noah, because she would never do that, but giving up in the sense of accepting that she had lost, that the universe had won, that no matter how hard she tried, it would never be enough. Her fingers pulled the business card from her pocket, wrinkled from being taken out and put away hundreds of times over the past 4 days, nearly thrown away at least 10 times but always kept, a string of numbers with no name and no address, a door into the dark. The Valentino family always gets what they want, and Olivia needed $30,000 within 48 hours. She dialed the number before she could change her mind. The phone rang twice, and then Marco's voice answered, calm as if he had been waiting for this call the entire time. "Ms. Carter, I have been expecting you." Marco arrived at the hospital within 37 minutes, still in his flawless black suit, as if 3 a.m. were a perfectly normal working hour. He did not ask why she had changed her mind, did not look triumphant, did not say "I told you so." He simply handed her a check for $30,000 already signed, and a contract 20 pages thick. "An advance," Marco said. "Non-refundable if you complete 6 months of employment. Mrs. Helena is aware of your brother's condition." Olivia stared at the check, her hand shaking. "How does she know?" she asked. "The Valentino family knows everything they need to know," Marco replied, sliding the contract toward her. "Sign it, Miss Carter. Your brother does not have much time." Olivia skimmed the contract. 6 months as a personal interpreter for Helena Valentino, a salary of $15,000 per month, comprehensive medical insurance for her and Noah, strict confidentiality regarding everything she would see or hear during her employment, and a single line near the end she almost missed. The employee agrees to comply with all reasonable requests of the Valentino family within the scope of employment, and she knew that reasonable meant something very different in the world of a Mafia family. She knew this could be a trap, that she was selling her soul to people the entire city feared, that she might be stepping into a world she would never escape. But Noah lay 20 meters away with an infection spreading through his body, and she had no choice. Olivia Carter, 27 years old, orphaned, exhausted, and desperate, picked up the pen and signed her name. "Noah's surgery will be performed tomorrow morning," Marco said when she set the pen down. "The best surgeon in the city. Everything has been paid for. A car will pick you up Monday morning to begin work at the Valentino estate." And then he walked away, leaving Olivia sitting there with the check in her hand and the feeling that she had just made a bargain with the devil. But at least Noah would live, and that was all that mattered. She would deal with the rest later. Monday morning, exactly 7 o'clock. A gleaming black Mercedes S-Class pulled up in front of Olivia's crumbling apartment like a swan that had wandered into a pond of carp. Neighbors leaning out of windows, children stopping their games to point, and Mrs. Wilson standing on the lower balcony with an expression caught halfway between worry and curiosity. Olivia had been awake since 5 a.m. to prepare. even though she did not know what she was truly preparing for. She wore the neatest clothes she owned, a white button-down shirt washed so many times it had faded soft and thin, and black slacks she had bought from a second-hand shop 2 years earlier for $7, no lipstick because she did not own any, no jewelry because the only piece she had was now sitting in a pawn shop, only her brown hair brushed smooth and eyes hollow with exhaustion but filled with resolve. Noah had undergone surgery successfully 2 days earlier and was recovering better than expected at the hospital, and Mrs. Wilson had agreed to care for him while Olivia worked, paid generously from the advance she had received. Olivia had visited Noah earlier that morning, kissed his forehead, and promised she would come back as soon as she could. "Where are you going with such a fancy car?" Noah signed, eyes wide as he looked out the hospital window at the Mercedes below. "To a new job," Olivia signed back, forcing a bright smile. "A better one, so I can buy you lots of new books." Noah smiled, that angelic smile that made everything worth it, and Olivia carried it with her like a talisman as she stepped into the waiting car. Marco sat behind the wheel, silent and cold as ever, offering no greeting and no conversation as he drove through streets. Olivia gradually stopped recognizing, from her familiar poor neighborhood with graffiti, scarred walls and barred grocery stores into tree-lined roads flanked by mansions, then farther still into the suburbs where estates hid behind tall fences and dense security cameras. 40 minutes later, the car stopped before a massive iron gate. 2 men in black suits checked the vehicle, nodded to Marco, and the gate slowly opened, and Olivia found herself entering a completely different world. The Valentino estate rose before her like a castle from the Gothic horror films she had watched as a child. Somber gray stone walls at least 4 stories high, pointed towers piercing the overcast Chicago sky, stained glass windows reflecting eerie light, and dozens of gargoyles staring down from the roofline with stone eyes that seemed to judge every soul entering their domain. The grounds sprawled outward in labyrinthine paths, rare black roses lining the drive, and a massive black marble fountain at the center. Water murmuring softly as the only sound in a terrifying silence. But what made Olivia's skin prickle was not the architecture or the gardens. It was the men, everywhere, guarding the gate, patrolling the perimeter, sitting inside black vehicles scattered across the grounds, all in black suits, all standing with the posture of men trained to kill, all scanning her with eyes measuring threat. Olivia swallowed hard, knowing what the Valentino family was in theory, and now understanding what that meant in reality. Inside the mansion was even more overwhelming. A grand hall the size of a basketball court with a vaulted ceiling painted in frescoes of Greek mythology, a sweeping white marble staircase spiraling upward, enormous crystal chandeliers scattering light into thousands of sharp reflections, and oil paintings in gilded frames lining the walls, each worth more than the apartment she used to rent. No, not rent anymore. She had been evicted the week before, her belongings stored at Mrs. Wilson's place while she had nowhere to return to. "My dear girl has arrived." Helena Valentino's voice rang out from the top of the stairs, pulling Olivia from her thoughts, and Helena descended in a deep blue silk dress and her familiar black pearls, her smile unexpectedly warm as she embraced Olivia like a long-lost relative, leaving Olivia stiff with uncertainty. "I am so glad you agreed," Helena signed as she stepped back, her aged hands surprisingly precise. "I have been practicing since I met you." "You learned sign language for me?" Olivia asked, genuinely stunned. "An old woman can learn something new every day," Helena laughed. "And I have excellent motivation. Come now. I will introduce you to everyone." Everyone turned out to be an army of staff that left Olivia dizzy. Mr. Peterson, the butler, a 60-year-old man with a white mustache and severe bearing. Mrs. Martinez, the head chef, a warm Latina woman with rosy cheeks. 12 housemaids in black and white uniforms, 8 gardeners, and at least 20 bodyguards. Olivia carefully avoided making eye contact with. Helena introduced Olivia to all of them, emphasizing that Olivia would join every family meal and that she was not merely an employee but my honored guest. Olivia wanted to ask why an interpreter needed to be treated like an honored guest, but she stayed silent, having learned that fewer questions meant greater safety here. They were walking along the second-floor corridor when a set of oak double doors swung open, and Dominic Valentino stepped out. He looked different from Christmas night, not in stature or features, still tall, still sharply carved as stone, still storm-gray eyes and ink-black hair, but in the light, under the chandeliers, she could see details the shadows of the obsidian had hidden, a faint scar along his left temple, large hands with knuckles scarred as if from a lifetime of fighting, and eyes that were not only cold but dead, as though whatever part of him could feel had been killed long ago. Dominic looked at her. 1 second, 2, then the corner of his mouth lifted into a sneer Olivia had never seen anyone wear before. "The waitress," he said, his voice low as thunder and dripping with contempt, "the one who sprawled across the floor at the obsidian, claiming she was testing the marble." Then he turned to Helena, eyes sharp. "Is this your latest matchmaking scheme, Mother? Your standards are slipping." "Dominic," Helena snapped, though her tone carried familiarity rather than anger, like an argument repeated 100 times before. But her son did not listen. He looked Olivia up and down once more with the detached appraisal of defective merchandise and walked away, his heels striking marble like a countdown to something Olivia did not want to know, disappearing down the corridor without a backward glance. Olivia stood frozen, feeling as if an icy storm had passed straight through her bones. She had prepared herself for danger, for luxury, for strangeness, but not for the bone-deep contempt of a man she had never wronged. "Do not mind him," Helena said gently, resting a hand on Olivia's shoulder. "My son has issues with communication, and attitude, and generally with everything involving human emotion, but he is good inside, I think, I hope." Olivia said nothing, only watched the direction Dominic had gone and wondered what kind of hell she had just walked into. The first 2 weeks at the Valentino estate were the strangest 2 weeks of Olivia's 27 years of life, because on paper her job was simple: accompany Helena everywhere, interpret sign language when needed, and help her communicate with those who did not sign. Yet in reality it felt like stepping into a play whose script she had never been given. Helena treated her like a long-lost granddaughter miraculously found again, asking if she had eaten breakfast, if she had slept well, if she needed another blanket because the night had been cold, interrogating her for an hour about her tastes, before ordering Chef Martinez to prepare only the foods Olivia liked, assigning her a vast guest suite with a king-size bed, a private bathroom with a soaking tub and hot shower, and a closet already filled with new clothes. Olivia knew she could never afford even if she worked her entire life, clothes whose price tags she did not dare check for fear of fainting on the spot. Yet the strangest part of all was Dominic, or more precisely his complete absence from her life despite living under the same roof, because he ignored her as if she were a ghost only he could not see, sitting across from her at family breakfasts, without those storm-gray eyes ever turning toward her for even a second, changing direction in hallways, if they accidentally crossed paths as if she carried something contagious, speaking to his mother in meetings, where Olivia interpreted as though no one else were in the room. Olivia told herself she did not care, repeating it each morning as she woke in the luxurious bedroom and faced her reflection in the mirror, because she was here for the money, for Noah, for a 6-month contract that would give her enough to rebuild her life, not to befriend an arrogant mafia boss with severe social deficiencies. And if he wanted to ignore her, then fine, she would ignore him right back. The problem was that Helena Valentino was not a woman who accepted defeat. She began engineering situations where Olivia and Dominic were forced together with increasing frequency and subtlety, making family breakfasts mandatory every day and somehow, inexplicably, seating Olivia beside Dominic, despite the 12 chairs at the table. Deciding on the 3rd day that Olivia must attend an important business meeting Dominic was leading, even though the meeting was entirely in English, and no one there needed an interpreter. Insisting on the 5th day that Dominic drive her shopping because she suddenly no longer trusted her personal driver after 40 years of loyal service, resulting in 3 hours trapped in a car with Dominic rigid behind the wheel like an ice statue, Helena in the back seat issuing commands like a queen, and Olivia wedged between them, not knowing where to look. On the 8th day, Helena hosted a dinner with an Italian business partner and demanded Olivia be present, because I need you to translate what I say, even though the man spoke flawless English, and Helena could read his lips perfectly, well. And on the 10th day, Helena abruptly claimed her back hurt and required Dominic to carry her from the living room to her bedroom, a distance she had walked without difficulty 10 minutes earlier, with Olivia following to interpret instructions like go slower and turn left here, while Dominic stared at his mother with the look of a man who knew he was being manipulated and could do nothing about it. "Mother," he growled after being forced to drive her for the 3rd time that week, "I know exactly what you are doing." And Helena replied with flawless innocence that she was simply buying shoes and was an old woman not allowed to buy shoes, especially with her interpreter, in his car, for 4 hours, adding that Olivia needed more clothes, turning to Olivia frozen in the back seat to ask sweetly whether she wanted more clothes, prompting Olivia to wish she could evaporate as she protested politely that she did not need anything, only for Dominic to cut in that she did not want to and was merely being polite, which Helena dismissed with a wave of her hand before declaring that Olivia also needed new shoes because the ones she wore were too old. Olivia looked down at her $7 secondhand shoes that had lasted her 2 years and were still perfectly fine by her standards, though clearly unacceptable by Helena Valentino's. That shopping trip lasted 5 hours rather than the promised 4, spanning 12 stores, ending with Helena buying Olivia 7 outfits, 3 pairs of shoes, 2 handbags, and a silk scarf Olivia refused 5 times before being forced to accept, while Dominic trailed behind like an unwilling bodyguard, scowling all day and saying nothing to Olivia beyond a weary sigh when Helena dragged them into a 13th store. That night, alone at last in her room, Olivia sat on the bed, staring at the mountain of shopping bags, and wondered whether she was living in reality or inside a romantic comedy where someone had forgotten to give her the script, because Helena was clearly trying to set her up with Dominic. Dominic clearly despised the idea to his core, and Olivia wanted nothing more than to finish 6 months of work without being dragged into any family drama at all, yet judging by the calculating look Helena wore whenever Dominic appeared, the look of a matchmaker already planning her next move, Olivia sensed that this simple wish was not going to come true. The breaking point came on the 15th day, when Helena suddenly announced that she needed Olivia and Dominic to attend a charity auction together that evening because she could not go alone, and her son needed an interpreter for her. Dominic needed an interpreter. Dominic, the man who knew his mother better than anyone alive and had communicated with her through lip-reading for decades without difficulty. And in that moment, Olivia realized she had endured enough, waiting until Dominic left the breakfast room with his usual scowl before turning to Helena with a look she had never dared to use on anyone who paid her salary. "Ma'am," she said, her voice calm but hard as steel, "I need to speak with you, privately." Helena regarded her with the same carefully practiced surprise Olivia had grown familiar with over the past 2 weeks. "Oh, is something wrong, dear?" "I am not merchandise," Olivia said bluntly, without circling the truth. "I am not a puppet for you to manipulate, and I am certainly not a bride to be ordered from a catalog and purchased for your son." The room fell silent, as if even the clock on the wall had stopped ticking. Helena set her teacup down slowly and studied Olivia with an expression she could not read, not anger, not shock, but a deep assessment as though she were weighing her response. "What do you think I am doing?" Helena asked, her voice oddly calm. "I think you are trying to set me up with Dominic," Olivia answered without hesitation. "You create situations to force us together. You buy me clothes as if I were a doll to dress up. You seat me next to him at every meal, even when there are 12 chairs at the table. I am not foolish, and I am not blind." Helena was silent for a long moment. Then she did something Olivia did not expect. She laughed, not mockery or disdain, but genuine laughter. The sound of someone who had found exactly what she was looking for. "You are right," Helena said when her laughter softened. "I am trying to match you with my son, and I do not intend to apologize for it." Olivia froze, having prepared herself for anger or denial or justification, but not for such direct honesty. "Why?" she asked, no longer angry, only bewildered. "Why me? You could choose anyone. Supermodels, beauty queens, daughters of billionaires. Why a nameless waitress drowning in debt with a younger brother to care for?" "Because I have tried all of them," Helena replied, her voice lowering into something more serious. "In the past 5 years I have introduced Dominic to at least 30 women. Supermodels, beauty queens, daughters of billionaires, lawyers, doctors, artists, all of them dismissed in less than a single dinner. My son trusts no one. He built a wall around his heart 5 years ago, and has not let anyone through since." Helena rose and walked to the window overlooking the vast garden. "And then you appeared." A girl sprawled on the floor of the obsidian, joking with the man all of Chicago fears as if he were just another customer. A girl who looked at me and saw a deaf woman deserving respect rather than a wealthy old woman to be flattered. A girl who signed 6 simple words and made me cry for the first time in 15 years. She turned back to Olivia. "And I saw how my son looks at you. He does not realize it, but I am his mother. I see it. I see how he forces himself not to look at you at meals, how he changes direction in hallways to avoid you yet always knows exactly where you are in the house, how he asks Marco about you when he thinks no one is listening. Dominic cares about you, he simply does not know how to admit it." Olivia did not know what to say, standing there in the opulent breakfast room, feeling the ground beneath her begin to shift. "I do not want to be loved because I was arranged," she said at last, her voice softer but firm. "I do not want to become your daughter-in-law just because you decided so. I am a person, not a chess piece, I know. Helena nodded. I am not forcing you. I have no right to force you. I only create opportunities. I open doors. Whether you walk through them is a choice for you and Dominic. She paused and her eyes softened. But I ask you one thing. Do not close that door simply because you are afraid. Fear is a natural human response, but sometimes the best things in life exist on the other side of fear. Olivia did not answer. She only stood there wondering when her life had become this impossibly complicated. 1 week after the confrontation with Helena, Noah came to visit the estate for the first time, fully recovered from surgery, with Dr. Thompson declaring that the new implant was functioning even better than expected, and Olivia had asked Helena for permission to bring her brother over for the weekend, which Helena granted immediately with an enthusiasm that left Olivia unsure whether she should feel grateful or uneasy. I like children, Helena had said when Olivia thanked her, and I want to meet the boy you love enough to sell your soul to my family, a statement Olivia could not quite classify as praise or observation, and therefore chose not to question. Noah arrived at 10 in the morning on Saturday, his eyes wide as marbles at the sight of the massive mansion unfolding before him, sitting in the car driven by Marco, wearing the blue sweater Olivia had bought him with her first paycheck, his head swiveling constantly as if afraid to miss a single detail. Sister, he signed so fast, Olivia nearly struggled to keep up. Is this a castle? Do you work in a castle? Are there princesses? Are there dragons? There are no dragons. Olivia laughed, pulling him into her arms the moment he stepped out of the car. And no princesses either, just a very kind old lady and a lot of very serious adults. What about the tall uncle? Noah asked, remembering what his sister had told him, the one you said always looks angry. Olivia laughed again despite herself. He is here too. But you do not need to worry. He does not talk to people very much. Helena welcomed Noah like a long-lost grandson, kneeling to his eye level and signing slowly with hands that had clearly practiced more over the past week. You must be Noah. I am Helena. I have heard so much about you from your sister. Noah studied her, then her black pearl necklace, then looked back at her with the solemn concentration of an 8-year-old evaluating an adult. Sign language. He signed back. You are very good. Most adults do not know it. I am learning. Helena smiled. Because I do not hear very well anymore either. You and I are alike. Noah's eyes lit up. You are like me. Do you have a hearing aid? Mine is blue. I like blue. And from that moment on, Noah and Helena became inseparable. The boy trailing after her through the estate, asking hundreds of questions about everything, from the paintings on the walls to the gargoyles on the roof, Helena answering each one patiently, signing slowly when needed, smiling more in one single morning than Olivia had seen in the previous 3 weeks combined. But in the early afternoon, when Helena needed to rest, and Olivia was occupied discussing the coming week's schedule with her, Noah disappeared, having the habit of exploring without warning, and in a mansion this vast with dozens of rooms and sprawling gardens, finding an 8-year-old was like searching for a needle in a haystack. Olivia panicked, her heart racing as her mind conjured every possible disaster. Noah lost in the garden maze, Noah frightened by one of the guards, Noah wandering into rooms he should not enter and seeing things he should not see. She ran through the main hall, down the east corridor, past the library, and finally out into the back garden, where she stopped short. Noah was sitting on a stone bench, facing Dominic Valentino, the coldest Mafia boss in Chicago, the man the entire city feared, now looking at an 8-year-old boy with an expression Olivia had never seen on his face. Not cold, not contemptuous, but utterly bewildered, like a lion being questioned by a kitten and having no idea how to respond. Olivia moved to rush forward, but Helena placed a hand on her shoulder from behind. Wait, she whispered. Look. Noah was signing animatedly at Dominic, small hands moving quickly with the enthusiasm of a child, while Dominic stared at those fluttering hands as though trying to solve an impossible equation. What is he saying? Dominic asked, his voice no longer icy but edged with something close to helplessness. Glancing around for someone to translate before his gaze landed on Olivia at the edge of the garden. Her, he said to Noah, pointing at Olivia. Your sister will translate. Olivia approached reluctantly. What are you asking him, Noah? She signed. Noah turned to her with the most innocent expression in the world, and signed that he had asked how tall the man was and whether he played basketball because he was very tall, and then asked why he always looked angry, and whether his stomach hurt. Olivia nearly choked, glancing at Dominic in uncertainty, and in a brief fleeting moment she saw the corner of his mouth twitch as if suppressing a smile. He asked if I play basketball, Dominic said dryly, his voice stripped of its former sharpness. And why I look angry. He thinks I have a stomachache. I am sorry, Olivia rushed to say. He is just a child. He does not know. It is fine, Dominic cut in, then turned back to Noah, studying him for a long moment, and Olivia saw something shift in those storm-gray eyes, a fraction of the armor lowering, just enough for her to notice. Then Dominic did something Olivia never would have imagined. He knelt down to Noah's eye level and spoke slowly enough for the boy to read his lips. I do not play basketball, but I know how to play chess. Would you like to learn? Noah looked at Dominic, then at Olivia for permission, then back at Dominic with eyes shining. Sign it, he signed quickly, so I can understand better. And there, in the vast garden of the Valentino estate under the afternoon sun filtering through the trees, Olivia watched Dominic Valentino, the most feared Mafia boss in Chicago, awkwardly raise his hands and attempt to sign the word chess by pointing toward a nearby stone chessboard and miming teaching with the intense concentration of a man negotiating a multi-million-dollar deal, while Noah grinned broadly and hopped off the bench to run toward the board. Teach me, he signed. I learn fast. My sister says I am smart. Helena stood beside Olivia, taking her hand and squeezing it gently. You see, she whispered, eyes glistening. I told you. There is a good man inside him. He has simply forgotten. Olivia said nothing, only watched her brother and the coldest man she had ever known sitting together before a chessboard, one clumsily explaining rules with uncertain gestures, the other smiling as if it were the happiest day of his life. And for the first time since entering this estate, Olivia felt that perhaps, just perhaps, she had been wrong about Dominic Valentino. From that day on, Noah came to the estate every weekend to learn chess with Dominic, and strangely enough, the cold Mafia boss never once refused. Every Saturday and Sunday at exactly 2 p.m, the two of them sat down at the stone chess table in the garden or in the library if it rained, and Dominic patiently taught the 8-year-old boy each move one by one, while Olivia always stayed nearby to interpret when needed, though she gradually realized that Dominic was teaching himself sign language every day, clumsy and awkward and far from fluent, but undeniably trying, and that effort, coming from a man she had once believed incapable of caring about anyone, slowly began to change the way she saw him. On the third evening after Noah and Dominic's first meeting, Olivia was sitting in the library reading when Dominic entered, and she instinctively prepared to leave, assuming he would want the space to himself, but instead he sat down in the chair across from her, as if her presence were the most natural thing in the world, and they remained in silence for a long time, broken only by the soft crackle of the fire and the steady ticking of the clock, until Dominic finally spoke, his voice low and distant, as though he were speaking more to himself than to her. The boy reminds me of my sister. Olivia looked up, startled, because she had never known Dominic had a sister. Helena had never mentioned her, and Olivia had never dared ask about his family. Lucia. Dominic said the name as if it carried the weight of 1,000 years of pain. She was only 12, innocent, full of life, trusting people too easily. Just like Noah, he paused and drew in a slow breath. She was killed in a gang retaliation when I was 18. My father's enemies wanted to send a message, and Lucia was that message. Olivia felt her heart tighten painfully. Words like I am sorry or my condolences felt hollow and inadequate, so she chose silence and listened. That is why I entered this world, Dominic continued, his eyes fixed on the flames as if staring into the past. Not for money, not for power, but because I wanted to find the people who killed Lucia and make them pay. I wanted to be strong enough that no one could ever hurt my family again. Then he turned to Olivia, his gray eyes no longer cold, but filled with quiet anguish. But I failed. I became the very thing I hated, and Lucia, if she were alive, would not recognize me anymore. Olivia looked at him, and for the first time she did not see a terrifying crime boss or the cold man who had looked down on her with contempt that first day. She saw a man who had lost too much and built walls around himself to avoid losing anything else. My parents died 2 years ago, Olivia said softly, her voice barely more than a breath. A car accident. A truck ran a red light. At least that is what the police said. Dominic watched her in silence, waiting. But I do not believe it was an accident, she continued, voicing something she had never spoken aloud to anyone before. My father was investigating a major financial fraud before he died. He was an accountant, and he discovered someone was laundering money through the company he worked for. He planned to report it. Then he received an investment offer from a source he believed was trustworthy. He put all their savings into it. 2 months later, the money was gone. And 1 week after that, my parents were dead. She stopped, her throat tight with bitterness. I have no proof, the police said. There was nothing suspicious, but I know. I feel it. Someone killed my parents and made it look like an accident, and there is nothing I can do. Dominic studied her for a long moment, and in the flickering firelight, Olivia saw his jaw clench. Do you know the company's name? He asked, his voice low and dangerous in a way she had never heard before. Or any names? Olivia shook her head. My father did not have time to tell me, and after he died I was too busy surviving and taking care of Noah to investigate. I was just a 25-year-old girl buried in debt with a child to raise. I had no power, no money, no influence to do anything. Silence settled heavily over the room, and then Dominic spoke again, his voice quieter now but firm like a promise. If you want, I can help you find the truth. I have people, I have ways, and if someone is responsible for your parents' deaths, I will find them. Olivia looked at him, shocked and moved all at once. Why? She asked. Why would you help me? Dominic did not answer immediately. He stared into the fire, and then back at her with an expression she could not fully decipher. Because I know what it feels like to lose someone and be powerless, he said at last. Because I know what it is like to live with questions that have no answers, and because Noah needs his sister to have peace. They sat there in silence, two strangers who had become slightly less strange, two wounded hearts carrying the scars of loss, finding recognition in one another, and Olivia did not know exactly what changed between them that night. She only knew that when she finally left the library to return to her room, the wall she had built around her own heart now carried a visible crack, and that crack had the shape of Dominic Valentino. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning, exactly 5 weeks after Olivia began working at the Valentino estate, when she was having breakfast with Helena in the dining room, and Dominic walked in with a face drained of color and storm, gray eyes burning with a fury she had never seen before. He did not say a word, only placed his phone on the table in front of Olivia, and when she looked down at the screen, her heart seemed to stop beating. It was a photograph of Noah, her brother on his way to school, stepping out of the gates of Lincoln Elementary with his blue backpack and the small teddy bear clipped to the zipper, the image taken from a distance, from a car parked along the street, the angle making it unmistakably clear this was not a casual snapshot. Someone had been watching her brother. Someone had stood only a few meters away and photographed him without her ever knowing. Beneath the photo was a message originally in Russian, translated into English, saying that people who do not belong in this world should not be here, that the waitress and her deaf boy were making the Valentinos weak, and that they should be sent away before they were sent away in another manner, signed Viktor Kozlov. And Olivia found she could not breathe as she stared at Noah's innocent face, smiling at a friend, feeling the world collapse around her. Viktor Kozlov, Dominic said, his voice ice-cold with a violent rage simmering underneath. A Russian gang leader out of New York who was trying to push into our territory in Chicago and doing everything he could to weaken the Valentino family. And somehow he knows about you. About Noah. Who told him? Olivia asked, her voice shaking. Who gave him this information? I am finding out, Dominic replied, his jaw clenched so tightly she could see the muscle twitch beneath his skin. And when I do, that person will wish they had never been born. Helena rose from her chair, her face pale as well, but her voice steady with the calm of someone who had faced danger her entire life. What does Kozlov want? She asked her son. He wants us to show weakness, Dominic answered. He knows I am protecting Olivia and Noah, and he thinks that makes them leverage. He wants us to send them away to prove we are afraid to confront him, or he wants us to keep them, so he has hostages when he needs them. Olivia stood, her legs trembling so badly she had to grip the edge of the table. I will leave, she said, forcing calm into her voice while she was breaking apart inside. I will take Noah far away, out of Chicago, away from here. I do not want to put your family in danger. Where would you go? Dominic asked sharply. How much money do you have? Do you know how to disappear from a Russian Mafia network spread across the entire country? How far do you think you could run before they found you? Olivia had no answer because she knew he was right. She had $4,000 in savings, an 8-year-old brother with special needs, and no skills beyond making coffee and scrubbing floors. She could not run. She had nowhere to go. You will stay here, Dominic said, and it was not a question but an order. You and Noah will move into the estate. 24-hour security. You do not leave without protection. You do not contact anyone outside without going through me. But Noah has school, Olivia protested weakly. He cannot stop going. I will hire the best tutors. Dominic replied without hesitation. He will study here until the threat is dealt with, and the threat will be dealt with. I promise you that. He stepped closer, and for the first time Olivia saw something different in those storm-gray eyes, not anger directed at her but concern, real concern. No one touches what is mine, Dominic said, his voice low and dangerous like thunder before a storm. Do you understand me? No one is allowed to touch you or Noah. Olivia looked at him, and in that moment she did not know whether she should be afraid or reassured. She had just become the target of a Russian Mafia syndicate, but she had also just been claimed under the protection of another. Her life had gone from poverty to mortal danger in 5 weeks, and she did not know how to process that. But when she looked into Dominic's eyes and saw the unshakable resolve there, she knew one thing: whatever happened, he would not allow anyone to harm Noah, and somehow that was enough for her to nod in agreement. 2 hours later, Noah was brought to the Valentino estate in a convoy of 4 vehicles and 8 armed guards, the boy taking it all in with wide eyes, not understanding what was happening but happily accepting it because he was close to his sister and because the tall uncle who taught him chess said Noah would now live in a castle. Olivia held her brother tightly and hid her frightened tears. She had brought Noah into this world, and now she had to find a way to protect him from it. 1 month of living in the Valentino estate showed Olivia 2 completely different faces of Dominic, and she no longer knew which one was real. By day, he was the cold chief executive of Valentino Holdings, seated in conference rooms with men whose expressions were carved from ice, issuing decisions she did not dare imagine. And once, passing his office by accident, she overheard part of a meeting, Dominic's voice low and devoid of emotion, as he spoke about handling a traitor, the word handling making her shiver because she knew exactly what it meant in his world. She knew who he was, she knew what kind of world he belonged to, and she knew the hands that taught Noah how to play chess had done things she never wanted to picture. But at night, when the estate fell into silence and the meetings were over, she saw another Dominic. She saw him sit for hours with Noah in the library, patiently explaining each move. Even when the boy asked the same question for the 5th time, she saw him study sign language every night, practicing in front of the mirror like a child learning to speak, only so he could communicate with Noah without needing Olivia to translate. She saw him hide a bottle of painkillers in his desk drawer, and when she casually asked Marco about it, she learned that Dominic had been injured in an assassination attempt 5 years earlier. The bullet still lodged near his spine because surgery was too dangerous, and every time the weather turned cold, the pain tormented him like hell. Yet he never complained to anyone. She saw him stay awake until 3 in the morning, reading financial reports from the charitable organizations funded by the Valentino family, crossing out suspicious entries in red ink, and calling for audits the next day. She saw him standing alone in the garden one evening on the 12th of March, and when she asked Helena why Dominic seemed more withdrawn than usual, Helena told her it was the anniversary of Lucia's death. Every year on this day, my son goes into the garden and stands where Lucia used to play when she was little, Helena said distantly. He does not cry. He does not speak. He simply stands there alone until the sun rises, and no one is allowed to approach. Olivia watched Dominic's silhouette through the window, motionless in the garden beneath the moonlight, and felt her heart ache. He was not a monster. He was a man who had lost too much and had to become one in order to survive. There was a difference. Even if the line between them was so thin, it was almost invisible. And then there were the small moments she began to notice. The way Dominic always made sure Noah's favorite food was prepared first at breakfast, the way he ordered staff to buy a star-shaped nightlight after hearing Noah say he was afraid of the dark, the way he stood outside Noah's bedroom door every night to check that the boy was asleep, believing no one saw him, though Olivia did, and the way he looked at her. She did not know when she started noticing, but once she did, she could not stop. Dominic watched her when he thought she was not paying attention, his gray eyes no longer cold but carrying something she did not dare name. He asked Marco about her every day, whether she was well, whether she needed anything, whether she looked tired. As if he could not bring himself to ask her directly, he made sure her room always had fresh flowers, even though she never requested them, and when she asked who ordered the flowers, no one knew, yet she caught Dominic looking away. One night, Olivia woke at 2 in the morning, unable to sleep, and went downstairs for water. She found Dominic sitting alone at the dining table, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring into nothingness with exhausted eyes. He did not hear her approach, and she stood there for a moment watching the lonely figure of the man the entire city feared. And in that moment she realized she was no longer afraid of him. She did not know whether that was good or bad, but as she turned to go back to her room, she heard Dominic's voice rise from the darkness. "You cannot sleep." Olivia turned back. He had known she was there all along. "No," she answered. "What about you?" "I have not slept well in years," Dominic said, his eyes still fixed on the empty space before him. Ever since Lucia died, she wanted to sit beside him, wanted to say something to ease the pain she knew he carried, but she only stood there, and the moment stretched like an eternity. Two people facing each other in the quiet darkness of the kitchen, saying nothing yet understanding everything. "Good night," Olivia said at last and turned away. She did not see Dominic watching her until her figure disappeared up the stairs, and she did not know that that night, for the first time in 5 years, Dominic Valentino truly wanted to sleep. The news arrived on a Thursday morning while Olivia was having breakfast with Noah and Helena. The Bean and Brew Cafe where she once worked had been bombed the night before. 2 of her former co-workers were dead. Maria, the 23-year-old newlywed, who had always shared half her lunch with Olivia when she knew she had no money for food, and Mr. Johnson, the 62-year-old manager who had given Olivia paid time off when Noah was hospitalized, even though company policy forbade it, and Olivia knew immediately that they had died because of her. The moment she saw the message attached to the news report on Dominic's phone. "This time it is the cafe. Next time it will be the boys' school. Signed Victor Kozlov." She did not cry because she had cried too much in her life, and tears would not bring Maria or Mr. Johnson back, but something inside her shifted. A fire igniting where fear and helplessness had lived before. She could not keep hiding inside this estate, while innocent people died for her. She could not sit still while Kozlov murdered one person after another to send a message. She had to do something. The emergency meeting took place in Dominic's office 2 hours later. Olivia was not invited, but she stood outside the door and listened as Dominic, Marco, and 4 Kaporajim discussed how to deal with Kozlov. The problem was that they did not have enough information about his base in Chicago. They did not know how many men he had, and they did not know who inside their own organization had leaked information about Olivia. "Attacking without intelligence is suicide," Marco said. "We need an internal source." "There is one person," Dominic replied in a low voice. "Sergei Volkov. He is an information broker who works with both sides. He knows everything about Kozlov's operations in Chicago, but Sergei does not deal with us," Marco objected. "He has an old grudge against the Valentino family from your father's time. He will not speak to anyone who carries the Valentino name." And before Olivia could think twice, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. All eyes turned toward her, and Dominic rose with an expression of shock and anger. "What are you doing here?" he demanded coldly. "I heard that Sergei Volkov does not speak to people named Valentino," Olivia said, her voice astonishingly steady, while her heart pounded. "But I do not carry the Valentino name." The room went utterly silent. "Get out," Dominic ordered, his voice icy. "No," Olivia answered flatly. "I said get out." And I said no. She stepped closer to the table, looking Dominic straight in the eyes without fear. "Sergei Volkov owes my father a debt. My father saved his son from a car accident 10 years ago. Before I even knew who Sergei was or what he did, he told my father that if he ever needed anything he should call him. My father never did. But I can." Dominic studied her for a long moment, storm clouds gathering in his gray eyes. Then he signaled the others to leave the room. Marco hesitated, but Dominic growled once and they all disappeared, leaving the 2 of them alone in a space that suddenly felt too small. "You are insane," Dominic said when the door closed. "Maybe," Olivia replied. "Sergei is one of the most dangerous men I know. He does not care about loyalty or sentiment. He only cares about advantage. I do not care. You do not understand. He could kill you the moment he sees you, if he thinks it benefits him. Then send men with me. Set traps if you must. But I am the only one who can approach him without being rejected immediately, and you know it." Dominic stepped closer. So close she could see the flecks of gray within his storm-colored eyes. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, his voice no longer cold but carrying a pain she had not expected. "Why do you keep throwing yourself into danger as if your life has no value?" "Because Maria is dead," Olivia replied, her voice trembling but her resolve unbroken. "Because Mr. Johnson is dead. Because Kozlov will keep killing until he gets what he wants. And I cannot sit inside this estate eating luxury breakfasts and sleeping on soft beds while innocent people die because of me out there. You are not my owner, Dominic Valentino. This is my life, my brother, and I will do anything to protect it. Dominic froze, and she saw something shatter in his eyes, something he had kept hidden for a very long time. Then he did something she never expected. He grabbed her shoulders, not roughly but almost desperately, as if afraid she would disappear if he did not hold on. "I cannot lose anyone else," he said, his voice breaking in a way Olivia had never heard before. "Do you understand? I lost Lucia. I lost my father. I lost myself in this world for so many years. I cannot lose any more." He paused, drew a deep breath, and when he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "I cannot lose you." Olivia stood there, her heart skipping a beat. He had called her you in the intimate sense for the first time. Not Olivia, not Miss Carter, but you, and the weight with which he said it made her knees nearly give way. "I will not die," she said at last, her voice soft as breath. "I promise." Dominic looked at her, his gray eyes filled with pain and longing. Then he released her shoulders and stepped back as if forcing himself to regain control. 10 guards, he said, his voice calm again, though Olivia could see his hands trembling. 10 guards will go with you, tracking devices on you, and if there is any sign of danger, you pull back immediately. No heroics, no recklessness. Do you hear me? Olivia nodded, because she did not trust her voice. Dominic looked at her for one long second, as if memorizing every line of her face, then turned and walked out of the room, leaving her standing there with her heart racing and a single word echoing in her mind. You. He had called her you. The meeting with Sergei took place at a Russian restaurant on the south side of Chicago, where dim lights and the sharp scent of vodka mixed with cigarette smoke. Olivia stepped inside while 10 of Dominic's guards secured the perimeter outside, a tracking device hidden in her coat, and her heart pounding like a war drum. Sergei Volkov was a man in his mid-50s with silver-white hair and eyes as cold as Siberian ice. He looked at her as one would look at a mouse that had wandered into a nest of snakes. Yet when she spoke her father's name and reminded him of the debt he owed, his gaze shifted. He agreed to talk. He gave her information about Kozlov's base in Chicago, the number of men he had, the planned attack on the Valentino family scheduled for the coming week. Olivia memorized every word, thanked him, and stood to leave, believing it was over. She was wrong. The ambush came the moment she stepped outside. Dominic's 10 guards were taken down within 30 seconds, shot from the rooftop across the street by unseen snipers, who revealed themselves only when it was too late. Olivia tried to run, but a black van blocked her path, and before she could scream, a wet cloth was pressed over her nose, and the world went dark. She woke in a cold concrete basement, her hands bound to an iron chair, tape over her mouth, her head splitting with pain. Viktor Kozlov stood before her, a man in his 40s with closely cut blonde hair, a square jaw, and the smile of someone who took pleasure in other people's suffering. "The waitress," he said in thick Russian, "you have caused me a great deal of trouble. Valentino protects you like a prized possession, which means you are valuable, and valuable things can be used for bargaining." He tore the tape from her mouth, and Olivia clenched her teeth to keep from screaming. "Call Valentino," Kozlov ordered, thrusting a phone in front of her. "Tell him that if he wants to see you alive, he must surrender. Hand over all of Chicago territory to me." Olivia looked at the phone, then at Kozlov, with eyes she did not know she possessed, eyes filled not with fear but with pure contempt. "No." Kozlov blinked as if he had misheard. "What did you say?" "I said no," Olivia replied, her voice unnervingly calm, though her hands trembled in the restraints. "I will not call anyone. I will not beg, and I will certainly not help you take anything from Dominic Valentino." Kozlov studied her for a long moment, then laughed, a sound like cracking ice. "You are brave," he said, "or foolish. We shall see how long that attitude lasts." The next 12 hours were 12 hours of hell. Olivia would never forget. They beat her, shocked her with electricity, poured cold water over her, and left her shaking in a basement cold as death. Kozlov recorded videos and sent them to Dominic one by one, each a minute long, each showing Olivia being tortured with demands for surrender. But Olivia did not beg. She bit her lip until it bled. She thought of Noah, of his smile each morning, of the way his small hands signed sister. She thought of Helena and the way the older woman held her like a daughter. She thought of Dominic, of the pain in his gray eyes when he called her mine, of the way he looked at her as if she were the only thing worth saving in his dark world. And she refused. Again and again she refused. Because she knew that if she begged Dominic would surrender, he would give up everything to save her, and Kozlov would kill them both. She would rather die than become the reason Dominic fell. In the 11th hour, when Olivia no longer had the strength to keep her eyes open, and her body hurt so badly she could not tell reality from nightmare, gunfire erupted. Not a single shot, but dozens, hundreds, as if hell itself had broken loose outside. The iron door was kicked in, and Dominic appeared, looking as though he had stepped straight out of a battlefield. His suit torn, blood on his cheek, whether his own or someone else's, she could not tell. And his eyes, those storm-gray eyes, no longer cold but blazing with the madness of a man who had lost all control. He saw her battered body bound to the chair, saw the dried blood on her mouth, saw her eyes struggling to stay open to be sure he was real, and he froze for a single second. Then he rushed forward, cut the restraints, lifted her as if she were the most precious thing in the world, and held her with all the strength of a man who had just recovered what he believed he had lost forever. "Olivia," he whispered into her hair, his voice breaking in a way she had never heard. "Olivia, Olivia, you are alive, you are alive." She wanted to speak, to say she was fine even though she was not, to say she knew he would come even though she had not been sure, but she was too weak, and all she could do was rest her head against his chest and let the tears fall. Then she felt something wet drip onto her hair. She looked up and saw what she never thought she would see. Dominic Valentino was crying, tears streaming down his angular face, uncontrolled, unhidden, and he did not try to stop them, only held her tighter, as if afraid she would vanish if he let go. "I thought I lost you," he said, his voice shattered. "I watched those videos and I thought I would lose you the way I lost Lucia. I could not breathe. I could not think. I only knew I had to find you or I would burn this city to the ground. I am here," Olivia whispered, lifting a trembling hand to his face to wipe away the tears. "I am here. I am not going anywhere." Dominic looked at her with gray eyes filled with tears, and a love he no longer tried to hide. Then he bent and kissed her forehead, her cheek, her nose, each kiss light as breath, yet carrying the weight of the world. "Never do that again," he said. "Never throw yourself into danger for me again. Do you hear me?" Olivia smiled, a weak but honest smile. "I cannot promise that." Dominic looked at her, helpless and loving and desperate all at once. Then he lifted her and carried her out of the hellish basement, past the bodies of the enemies he had killed to reach her, and did not look back even once. 2 weeks of recovery felt like 2 weeks of being treated as a queen, while feeling as fragile as a child. The Valentino family's private physician came every day to examine her, rewrap her wounds, check the cracked ribs, and make certain no internal injuries had been overlooked. She was placed in the largest room of the mansion, not the guest room she had stayed in before, but the main bedroom on the 2nd floor. The room, Helena said, was reserved for the most important person in this house. Olivia wanted to protest, wanted to say she did not deserve it, but she was too weak to argue, and Helena was far too stubborn to listen. Noah stayed with her every day, climbing onto the bed to lie beside his sister and telling her about the chess games he played with Dominic, about how Dominic had lost to him 3 times in a row, and how Noah suspected he had done it on purpose just to make him happy. The boy did not know what had happened to her, did not know about those 12 hours of hell, and Olivia prayed he never would. Helena cared for her like a daughter, sitting by her bed for hours, reading aloud when Olivia could not sleep, signing stories from her youth when Olivia needed distraction from the pain. She told her how she had met her husband, a poor boy from Sicily with big dreams and burning eyes, and how she had loved him even knowing life beside him would never be ordinary. "I was once an ordinary girl too," Helena sighed slowly one afternoon as sunlight streamed through the window and softened her face. "Poor, with nothing but my pride and a heart that knew how to love, and I chose to step into this world because I loved a man who lived in the shadows. I do not regret it, even on the nights I cried alone, even after I lost my husband and nearly lost my son. I do not regret loving him." She paused and looked at Olivia, with eyes that carried a lifetime of experience. "My son is not perfect. He lives in darkness and has done things the light will never forgive. But since you came into his life, for the first time in many years, I see him wanting to step into the light. You are that light, Olivia, you and Noah." Olivia did not know what to say. She only squeezed Helena's hand gently and let the silence speak, the gratitude she could not put into words. Yet the most surprising part of those 2 weeks was Dominic. He did not leave the mansion for a single day. Marco handled all outside matters while Dominic stayed, working in the office beside her room, and every 2 hours he appeared at her door to check whether she needed anything. At first he stood at the threshold as if afraid entering might disturb her, but by the 4th day he began sitting in the chair beside her bed, saying nothing, simply working on his laptop while she slept. She knew because one night she woke at 3 a.m. and found him still there, the glow of the screen lighting his exhausted face, and when she asked if he ever slept, he answered, "I sleep when I know you are safe." And he learned sign language, not casually as before, but seriously, diligently, for hours every day. She saw him practice with Noah, large hands that had taken lives clumsily mimicking the small gestures of an 8-year-old boy. She saw him watching instructional videos late at night when he thought no one noticed. She saw him asking Helena to teach him words he could not find online. "Why are you learning sign language?" she asked. On the 10th day, when she was strong enough to sit up and talk without pain, Dominic looked at her, his gray eyes no longer hiding anything. "Because I want to talk to my mother without you translating," he said. "So you can rest. And because," he paused as if weighing whether to continue, "because, if I want to spend my life with you, I need to know how to talk to Noah without anyone translating for me." The room was so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat. "You want to spend your life with me?" she whispered. Dominic stood, stepped closer, and sat beside her on the bed. He took her hands, his large, warm palms enclosing her smaller ones. "I cannot promise to leave the underworld," he said honestly. "That is a promise I cannot keep. But I can promise to slowly turn everything legitimate. I can promise to protect you and Noah at any cost, and I can promise to try every day to become a man worthy of you." Olivia looked at him, at eyes no longer icy but warmer than she had ever seen, at a sharp face softened by a love he no longer tried to hide, and she knew her answer. "I do not know what the future holds," she said softly. "I do not know if I am strong enough for your world, but I know I want to stay and find out." Dominic smiled, the first true smile she had ever seen on his face, real and so beautiful it made her forget how to breathe. "That is enough," he said. "That is enough." On Christmas Eve 1 year later, the Valentino mansion glowed with lights like a fairy tale dream. Olivia had never dared to imagine. Thousands of tiny lights hung throughout the garden, wrapped around tree trunks, traced the stone paths, and turned the fountain into a sculpture made of light. Inside, a Christmas tree nearly 4 meters tall stood proudly in the grand hall, decorated with crystal ornaments and red ribbons, crowned by a golden star that Dominic had lifted Noah up to place with his own hands. 1 year had passed since the night Olivia walked into the Obsidian, wearing shoes that did not fit and carrying $17.83 in her pocket. 1 year since she signed 6 simple words to an elderly woman and unknowingly changed her entire life. A year of tears and laughter, of fear and courage, of pain and healing. And now she stood here in the warm kitchen of the mansion, watching Noah help Mrs. Martinez decorate Christmas cookies with chocolate and colorful candy, while Helena sat nearby giving instructions in sign language she now commanded with intelligent, astonishing fluency. "Olivia." Dominic appeared in the doorway, still in his familiar black suit but with gray eyes completely transformed, warm and alive in a way she could never have imagined a year ago. "Can you come with me for a moment? There is something I want to show you." She glanced at Helena, and the older woman smiled with the knowing look of someone guarding a beautiful secret. "Go on, my dear. I will watch Noah." Dominic led her into the back garden where a glass pavilion stood among the black rose bushes now bare in winter. Inside the pavilion, hundreds of candles were lit, and red rose petals covered the floor like a velvet carpet. "Dominic," Olivia whispered, her heart racing. "What is this?" He did not answer with words. Instead, he stood before her, took a deep breath, and began to sign. His movements no longer clumsy as they had been a year ago, each gesture precise, gentle, and full of feeling. "You are the best thing that has ever happened to my life," he signed slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. "You taught me how to listen, how to see, how to feel again the things I thought I had lost long ago. You brought light into the darkness I lived in for so many years." Tears began to slide down Olivia's cheeks, and she did not try to wipe them away. "I want to spend the rest of my life," Dominic continued, then paused, frowned, and repeated the gesture. He looked down at his hands with frustration. "Wait, that was not right. I meant to say beside you, but I think I just proposed to your shoes." Olivia laughed through her tears. "You want to spend your life with my shoes?" "Technically, yes," Dominic admitted, a faint blush rising on his sharp features. "I practiced all week and still got it wrong." She said yes already. A voice burst out from behind the bushes and both Olivia and Dominic turned. Noah was hiding behind a tree, eyes bright and round, with Helena standing behind him trying unsuccessfully to pull him back. I heard everything. Noah signed quickly when discovered. She said yes. I knew it, because she says your name in her sleep and giggles. Olivia flushed from head to toe. Noah, what? It is true. I mean, I saw your lips moving while you slept. Dominic looked at Noah, then at Olivia, then back at Noah, and despite everything he was, despite his cold and dangerous reputation, he laughed, a real laugh, warm and joyful, a sound Olivia knew she would never forget. So what is your answer? He asked, turning back to her with sparkling gray eyes. I still have this part left. He pulled a small black velvet box from his pocket, opened it, and inside lay the most beautiful diamond ring Olivia had ever seen. But it was not the diamond that made her choke with emotion. It was the inscription inside the band, written in stylized sign language formed into an elegant pattern. Silent but forever. Olivia Carter, Dominic said, his voice low and trembling. Will you bind your life to mine? To this family? To this crazy life? Yes, Olivia whispered. 1,000 times yes, yes. Noah shouted and ran to hug both their legs. I knew it. I knew she would say yes. Helena stepped closer, tears shimmering but a radiant smile on her lips. I told you, she signed to Olivia. When I decide something, the universe must be ready. Dominic slipped the ring onto Olivia's finger and bent down to kiss her. A sweet and promising kiss, the kiss of two people who had walked through hell and found each other on the other side. Uncle, Noah tugged on Dominic's sleeve. If you marry my sister, you become my uncle, right? Uncle Dominic. Dominic looked down at the boy, then at Olivia, and nodded with the gentlest smile he possessed. That is right, my prince. I will be your uncle. Noah thought for a moment. Uncle Dominic, he tried the words. It sounds important, more important than the tall man who teaches chess. Much more important. Dominic replied. Noah beamed, an angelic smile lighting up the entire garden, and hugged Dominic's leg with all the strength of an 8-year-old boy. Afterward, the whole family went back inside where the Christmas feast awaited. Noah sat between Olivia and Dominic, Helena at the head of the table like a queen surveying her kingdom, and for the first time in many years, the Valentino mansion was filled with laughter and happiness. Instead of cold silence, Olivia looked around at the strange family she had found. 1 year ago, she was an invisible girl with worn shoes and dreams, no bigger than paying her bills. Today she was the fiancée of the most powerful man in Chicago, loved by a remarkable mother-in-law. And most importantly, Noah finally had a complete family. It all began with one night, a dropped envelope, and 6 signed words. Have a good night. Sometimes the greatest miracles begin with the smallest gestures, and sometimes we find family in the places we least expect. The story of Olivia and Dominic reminds us that kindness is never meaningless, that compassion can open doors money never could, and that love can bloom even in the darkest places if we are brave enough to give it a chance. That is a lesson each of us can carry into our daily lives, a smile to a stranger, a small act of help, a gentle word, all can change a life without us ever knowing. How do you feel about this story? Did it remind you of something in your own life? We would truly love to hear what your heart has to say. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, share it with those you love, and do not forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you will not miss the emotional stories we bring you every day. We send our warmest wishes to all of you watching. May you have good health, a joyful life, and days filled with peace and happiness. Thank you for being with us. Goodbye, and see you in the next video.